Hi readers, it's Lisa from the Battle of the Books Quiz Center. Sorry, I've been gone for a while, and honestly, nobody emailed me or made any comments on the YouTube comment section or whatever. So I don't even know if anybody's listening to me, but whatever. I've started this book and I love this book, and I'm going to go ahead and finish it now because I finished my second to last quiz yesterday, and I'll be done with all the quizzes for the 2026 Oregon Battle of the Books. And this is the last one, the Sunbearer Trials. So that's why I have not been reading for a while, because I decided to just focus and get to work and get done with all the quizzes. So now I'll go back to reading. So I do think this is what I'm doing. If you're listening, you will have an edge, because I think this is a very useful thing that I'm doing, leading you through the book with a highlighter pen and telling you exactly which parts are important that I'm going to make into questions for a quiz. So if you're there, good job. I'm going to go ahead and continue with the next chapter now. Besides, I'm curious what's going to happen next. It's been a while. Where am I now? Let's see. We are on chapter 9. Here we go. Fully extended, the brilliant feathers fluttered as Teo kept himself in the air far above the water down below. He felt like his heart was going to burst out of his chest. Teo whooped and punched his fist into the air, but that sent him toppling again. This time he quickly recovered. Remember, he's not used to flying because he's been keeping his wings all bound because he was, ashamed of his wings because they were female-looking feathers. And so he just wanted to hide them and not use them. And now his feathers burst out, male feathers. He's very happy and he's soaring through the sky. It was like suddenly having a second set of arms. He knew how wings worked, but he'd never bothered to learn how to properly fly. He was already exhausted and losing all momentum the adrenaline had given him. How the hell was he going to get himself down? He didn't get long to figure it out. There was a sudden explosion of white light, a crashing boom, a jolting, excruciating pain exploded in Teo's body. Every muscle seized. He couldn't move. He couldn't breathe. Down, down, down he fell, crashing into the freezing water below. Wonder what just happened. Cold, dripping wet, and humiliated, Teo stood next to his mother as they waited for Sol's rankings. To the side, Naya flashed him a thumbs up, her grin wild and excited. After Otzi had zapped him out of the sky with a lightning bolt, so that's what happened. Otzi zapped him out of the sky with a lightning bolt. Diosa Agua had been kind enough to scoop him out of the water, so he didn't drown. Though he could have done without the goddess's amused laugh as she dumped him back on the platform in front of the huge crowd. At least Otzi had the decency to give him an apologetic shrug. Just look at them, Teo, his mother cooed, running her fingers across his new wings. They shuddered and shook themselves out, tickled by the touch and spraying anyone close with water. Mom, he pleaded, but he couldn't stop smiling. The embarrassment of getting eliminated in front of a crowd of tens of thousands of people was at war with his excitement over his changed wings. But there were still bigger issues at hand. Teo tried to get a good look at Shio, but Mala Suerte stood in the way, talking to his son and probably offering reassurances. Already, Teo felt like he was failing the younger boy. Ocello seemed quite pleased with himself, smugly eyeing Teo after exchanging affectionate headbutts with Jose Guerrero. And while Soshi seemed to be actively ignoring Teo as her mother fussed over regrowing the flowers in her hair, the way Desi openly smiled at his wings made Teo blush. Desi signed something, and Teo was about to apologize because he didn't know any sign language when someone said, "They're very handsome." Aurelio stood behind Teo with his head tipped to the side, studying his wings, while Aristella was distracted talking to their mom. So it's Aurelio complimenting Teo on his new wings. Teo's breath hitched. What? Aurelio's attention snapped to his eyes. He stood up straighter. That's what Desi said. Teo's stomach dropped. Oh. He turned away from Aurelio, not wanting him to see the flush creeping across his cheeks. To Desi, he signed, "Thank you." It was the only sign he knew, highlighting that thank you is the only sign he knew, and that it was Desi who said that his wings were handsome. "Stubborn things, aren't they?" Quetzal mused and signed before trailing her fingers down the bright feathers. "Not unlike yourself," she added with a teasing smile. "Took them long enough," Teo grumbled. His left wing twitched and whacked him across the face. He spluttered through his feathers. Hey, I'm going to highlight that. It's like his wings have minds of their own. And when he said it took them long enough to come in as male colors, it took offense and slapped him. "I suspect they refused to change until you properly accepted they were a part of you," his mom reasoned with a knowing look, "that you needed them." Teo glanced at Aurelio again, but he had already gone back to his sister. Aristella stood next to her mom, hands on her hips and looking smug. Her makeup was still perfectly in place. The light sheen on her forehead somehow made her look even prettier. Diosa Lumbre had that same half-bored, half-annoyed look on her face. Her back was to Aurelio as he inspected his soot-covered hands. He flexed his gloved fingers and massaged his thumb into his palm. He looked perplexed, like he was trying to solve some complicated math problem in his head, but something wasn't adding up right. Then someone called to Aurelio from the crowd, and he looked up, his reserved smile back in place as he waved. Teo didn't know how the others had ranked, but it'd be a miracle if Sol hadn't put him in dead last. Not only had he not completed the trial, but he'd failed in epic fashion. Chisme was going to have a field day with the footage. Diosa Luna gathered everyone's attention. "Sol has determined the rankings," she announced, gesturing at two priests who rolled out a large stone slate. On its face, Sol's symbol was engraved and filled with gold paint. Along the bottom, each of the 10 competitors' glyphs sat in a horizontal line, 8 made of gold and 2 made of jade. There were 2 lumbre glyphs, one with an O in the flames for Aurelio, and the other with an A for Aristella. So 2 lumbre glyphs for Aurelio and A for Aristella. For a moment, nothing happened. But then the glyphs moved, positioning themselves in vertical ranking in the center of the sun. Aristella shrieked, her composure flying out the window when she saw she'd come in first. So Aristella, in the first challenge, came in first. She tried to recover, but the grin on her face was insuppressible. With a soft smile, Aurelio reached over and gave his sister's hand a gentle squeeze. In the most affectionate act Teo had ever seen from the goddess, Diosa Lumbre nodded her approval. "Congratulations, Aristella," Luna said. "If you'd come with us," Verdad said, appearing out of nowhere with Chisme at her side, "we'd love to get a few words." "An exclusive interview with our first top-ranked competitor," Chisme sang, draping his arms across Aristella's shoulders as he led her to a group of awaiting cameras and reporters. But Teo couldn't care less who came in first. He quickly skimmed the list as thundering cheers broke out from the stands, not at all surprised by Aristella, Aurelio, and Naya being so high. Soshi and Diosa Primavera held hands and screeched with excitement, looking smug. Dios Tormentoso nudged a very angry Guerrero. Teo expected to be at the very bottom, but to his surprise, 8th? Teo breathed, highlighting that Teo came in 8th. Beside him, Quetzal exhaled a sigh of relief, her hand pressing to her chest. "Thanks, Sol." Shio was right beneath him in 9th, so Shio's 9th. Teo leaned around his mom to see that Shio was covered in dirt, but otherwise unharmed. As he stared up at the rankings, his lips pressed into a line. Behind him, Mala Suerte squeezed Shio's shoulders and gave him a small shake. The Dios's expression was unreadable, but Teo could see his skin looked even paler than usual, and the sweat on his brow probably had little to do with the sun overhead. If Shio was in 9th, that meant his run must have been even more of a disaster than Teo's, but at least neither of them was last. In 10th place was... Ocello fumed. Marino, Teo, and Shio didn't reach the top within the allotted time, Diosaluna explained. So why am I last? Ocello demanded. So it's Ocello who's last. Teo's eyes nearly bulged out of his skull. Murmurs floated through the crowd. Teo knew good and well that Luna was the last diosa you'd want to piss off. Ocello, Guerrero hissed. The jaguar-headed god looked just as outraged as Ocello, but at least they had the brain to scold their child for speaking so brazenly to Diosa Luna. Luna gave them a smile, completely void of warmth. Are you questioning Sol's ranking? She asked, her voice resonating more loudly as the crowd grew silent. Ocello seemed to immediately regret their decision. I don't... You intentionally used rocks to destroy another semidiosa's glyphs, making it impossible for them to complete the trial. So that's why. Then you caused a rock slide, which fairly impacted your competitors, yes, but also put the priests acting as spotters at the base of the mountain in grave danger. So that's the second reason. So Ocello was kind of like, what do you say? She's calling foul on Ocello. The diosas had to step in to protect them. Ocello's eyes cut to the mountain where dust still swirled in the air like fog. Teo hated to think what would have happened to him if it weren't for his wings. He was a demigod, yes, but he didn't think that would have saved him from being splattered under a bunch of boulders. I would remind you, Ocello, Luna said slowly, deliberately, that as a semidios, it is both your honor and your duty to protect the people of Reino del Sol, not harm them. Highlighting that. Your behavior in this trial proved that you have much to learn about your position in the world. Be careful. This trial is complete. Diosa Luna addressed the crowd, leaving Ocello red-faced, their head lowered. Naya looked like Luna had just brought her a platter of pan dulce. Teo wanted to enjoy this moment too, but he couldn't. He and Shio managed to stay out of last place, but only due to Ocello badly fucking up. Something told Teo they wouldn't be so lucky in their next trial. If Teo wasn't careful, one of them was going to end up dead. No, hetero, but damn, Teo, your wings, Naya circled Teo back on the boat. Does this make me a furry? Shut up, Teo swatted at her, turning to get his wings out of her reach. After taking a shower and nursing his bruised ego, he'd met up with Naya and Shio in the common room. What? Naya said, laughing. I'm just saying, they look really good. Teo did his best to look annoyed, even though secretly the compliments left him feeling warm and buzzing. When they folded up, the top of his wings hit his shoulders, and the long primary feathers ended at the small of his back. But with their new freedom, they didn't want to cooperate. Instead, they ruffled and stretched like they couldn't stand standing still. They couldn't stand staying still. They are really cool, Shio agreed from his perch in the armchair. And your hair looks great too, Naya added. My hair? Teo reached up. It was still wet from his shower, but didn't feel any different. You didn't see? Naya grabbed Teo and pushed him over to a circular gold-framed mirror hanging on the wall. Instead of a dull brown, his hair had turned deep, iridescent black. So it used to be just dull brown. What the? Luminous hints of blue and green caught in the light when he turned his head. Folks pay good money to try to dye their hair like that, Naya said. How did you not notice? Shio asked. Guess I was too distracted by my wings, he murmured, tugging on a lock of his hair. Taking a shower with his wings had been nothing short of a struggle. They had knocked over every single bottle of fancy toiletries. He tried to wrangle them into one of his binders, but now it was like they had a mind of their own, with zero intention of letting Teo restrain them again. You should let them be free, Naya said, moving to the lounge on the arm of Shio's chair. They're badass, and if you could learn how to actually use them, they'll give you an edge in the trials. No offense, but you could use it. Teo glared, but he knew she was right. Today had been a catastrophic failure he couldn't afford to repeat. And they saved your life, Shio added in a voice that immediately made Teo feel guilty for taking up all the attention. Are you okay? He asked Shio, turning away from the mirror. Shio blinked his dark eyes slowly at Teo, offering him a wry smile. I guess, all things considered, I guess, Teo added. Well, I didn't get squished under a landslide, so I guess that was lucky, he mused with a small shrug. The hell even happened? Teo asked. Always the chismosa, Naya jumped right in. Okay, so I was next to Aurelio and Soshi, she said, talking a mile a minute and gesturing wildly. Aurelio couldn't be bothered. He basically did a speed run to the top, and that was that. Marino tried to use the waterfall to slow him down, but he wasn't quick enough. I was doing awesome, totally killing it, she said, cutting her hand across her neck for emphasis. But then Soshi did like a drive-by vining. 1 second I was scaling the mountain, looking awesome, and then bam, Naya punched the back of the chair, nearly toppling Shio over. It was like BDSM, which is hot, but without consent, which is not hot. Shio's eyes bulged. Teo let out a surprised laugh. But, I just whipped up some silver blades and shing. Naya slashed her hands through the air. I was back on my game. By the time I got to the top, Audistella, Aurelio, and Soshi were already there, and I could pretty much only see folks as they finished. But then fucking Ocello showed up. Naya's voice raised, a scowl firmly in place. They were about to cross the barrier to finish, but then they just stopped. Audistella even tried to get them to finish, and they usually do whatever she says, but they got this weird look and decided to fuck with the rest of y'all. So that's when Ocello did it before they even finished. They decided to turn back and sabotage the ones that were still on the way. Anger simmered under Teo's skin. So it wasn't enough for them to finish on time. Ocello had to make it harder on everyone else for no good reason. What a douche, Teo growled. A massive douche, Naya agreed. Did Ocello really destroy your glyphs? He asked Shio, who nodded and sank lower in his chair. Naya huffed. As established, Ocello is a douche. Right, but that's extra douchey, even for them. Teo gave her a skeptical look, but she went on. Even Aurelio tried to tell them to stop right before they caused the rock slide. He did? Teo cut in, surprised. Since when did Aurelio go against Ocello? Highlighting that. Yeah, but it was like Ocello couldn't even hear him, Naya continued. Usually the others follow whatever the twins want. Then they caused the rock slide, Shio said, fiddling with his bracelet. I wedged myself into a spot between two boulders and waited for it to be over. Well, at least you didn't get smashed into a pulp, Naya offered, trying to sound optimistic. You don't have any semidios powers that can help you out in the trials? Teo asked, feeling a bit desperate for some kind of solution. Shio shook his head. Nothing useful like magic weapons or wings. Teo rubbed his hand over his face, hit with a fresh wave of exhaustion. What was he going to do? He had barely been able to keep himself alive in the first trial, so how was he going to help Shio? The odds were not in his favor. It was like Shio was set up for failure. That is the end of this chapter, and I will continue soon, I promise, with chapter 10. In the meantime, keep reading.
You read the books, now ready, get set. BOBQB.net. You read the books, now ready, get set. BOBQC.net.